proclamations, the public participation, and we'll have the presentation from our highway director third. With that, I would ask the clerk to please call the roll.
Fiducia?
Here.
Gurl?
Present.
Gorel? Present. Hoffman?
Present.
Jury?
Present.
Kelly?
Here.
McDonald?
Present.
Nicolosi?
Here.
Red? Salgado? Schultz?
Here.
Tassoni?
Here.
Webster?
Here.
Westcott?
Present.
Wilson?
Present.
Biondo?
Present.
Booker?
Present.
Boomer?
Here.
Crosby? Here. Fellers? 18 present, 2 absent.
Thank you, Clerk Mullins. And with that, I'll ask you to stand, and I'll ask Mr. Westcott to lead us in our invocation. Mr. Westcott.
Heavenly Father, thank you for giving us the opportunity to serve you and those that have placed us in position to help others. We pray for those men and women that serve our country and our communities in dangerous situations. We continue to pray for those that have lost their lives in the line of duty. Help us as a government body to make proper decisions that will better our community. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you.
At this time, I'm going to ask John Weber and Lauren Davis to please join me at the podium. John, Lauren, and friends. So tonight we're going to celebrate Winnebago County Buy Local Month, and we have a short proclamation, and then I'll ask Lauren to say a few words. Whereas there are many registered businesses in Winnebago County that provide employment for residents, creating jobs for a large portion of our local population. And whereas buying local is an investment which supports local families. And for every $100 spent at a locally owned business, nearly half goes back into our community. Whereas buying locally grown food, locally produced products, and services from locally owned businesses can help ensure farms and businesses will continue to remain in our community for future generations. Whereas shopping locally is a conscious choice that moves Winnebago County towards self-sustainability and helps reduce our carbon footprint by reducing the packaging and fuel required to ship products from afar. Whereas if half of the U.S. employed population spent $50 each month in locally owned independent businesses, it would generate more than $42.6 billion in revenue. Whereas businesses are key partners in helping our community remain viable and largely local charities and regularly support local charities and other organizations. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Frank Haney, Chairman of the Winnebago County Board, do hereby proclaim August 2017 as Winnebago County Buy Local Month. Thank you so much for being here tonight, and Lauren, I'll have you say a few words. Thank you.
Well, we'd like to thank Chairman Haney and the rest of you for inviting us to be part of this proclamation and to give us a proclamation for Winnebago Buy Local Month. We're a completely volunteer grassroots organization, and our mission is just to connect the community with local businesses, put local businesses more at the forefront, and then also educate local business owners as much as possible at a low cost or free. So we do this by having bi-monthly networking meetings where we always add an educational element to them, free to attend. We have a social media event during the year where we invite speakers from all over the United States to come in and give our businesses education. And then we also have some public events. A local holiday market at the holidays is where we bring all the local businesses we can together, stuff them in a room, and let them sell their wares too, so you can buy local for the holidays in a very convenient setting. We also have a local holiday, or a totally local ice cream social, which is geared towards families and youth, and it's a way to teach youth about the benefit of buying local and get young kids to kind of know about local business owners face to face. And that's at Ice Cream Social, so I mean, everyone kind of has an idea of what that is. In this age of instant gratification and convenience, our simple mission is just to teach the great people of Winnebago County of all ages the drastic benefit of buying local and create an extraordinary awareness of how supporting local businesses can provide major opportunity, help create jobs, improve neighborhoods and safety, bring revenue to our county, and improve the local economy right from the building blocks of where we live. It's not just to feel it's a good thing to do, but it's also an investment in our community. It creates a prosperous area to live, work, and visit. It also creates a hot spot for tourism. If anyone's familiar with the phrase, "Keep Austin Weird," it was kind of a campaign to bring to light all of the really unique businesses in Austin. That's kind of what we think about when we think about local businesses. What businesses here make us different from anywhere else in the world? By proclaiming August as Winnebago by Local Month, we hope to spread the word and encourage the public to shop locally. As a 100% volunteer organization who depends on word of mouth heavily, we encourage everyone in this room to help us spread the word about buying local. You can add us on Facebook. We also have an Instagram. You guys all, or maybe Skylar will pass out flyers or a folder with some information about buying local inside it, and the actual facts and figures about what it does for our community. And we just want to say thank you to the local businesses who joined us here tonight. We've got Rocktown Adventures, Kevin, Mike from Entree, Liz from Halo Cupcakes, Marion from Marion Momily CPA, Mel from Frame Shop Gallery, John from Screw City Food Co-op, Skylar from Culture Shock. And thank you so much.
Thank you. Let's get on. We'll take a quick picture, and your group has an excellent spokesman.
Yes.
Am I?
You're right.
About the computer? Okay. All right.
Can we gotta switch in?
Switch, please.
Okay.
Not a panorama this time.
Yep, and looking at me, 1, 2, 3. Margie, you might want to sit upright. 1, 2, 3. There we go.
No, we want you.
Thank you. We'll
Thank
get this
you.
out.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thanks.
Gabby, I'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you again very much for being here tonight. Our next item of business is public participation. I'll read the short disclaimer. Comments shall be limited to 3 minutes. Speakers may not address a zoning matter, which are pending before the ZBA, zoning committee, or the county board. Personnel matters or pending or threatened litigation may not be addressed in open session. An individual may speak a maximum of 3 times per calendar year on the same topic. This prohibition shall include the repetition of the same topic in a statement of what is purported to be a different topic. Personal attacks or inappropriate language of any sort will not be tolerated. With that, I would ask our first speaker, Michael O'Toole, to come and speak about the court-mandated staff to the court system. Michael, if you'd join us up here, please. Thank you for being here, sir.
First time addressing the county board, so please extend me a little bit of grace. My name is Michael O'Toole. I'm simply a private Winnebago County citizen. I'd like to get some input in regards to what I've been reading about through the press and on listening on television in regards to this Illinois Supreme Court staff mandated additional staffing for the juvenile assessment center in the court system. Also, let me say that I do not view with suspicion anybody in this room's motives on either side, from the county board to the Winnebago County Circuit Court judges. each are looking, as I am on this issue that's mandated, that affects us residents, the county board, and the local court system by an outside body. As I understand from the county board links, the main issues from my perspective is how to have an efficiently run court system, safety of the court, and the personnel staff from the county sheriff's department when they receive handoff of juveniles to be processed into the system, county court system, and then also transferred between the juvenile assessment center to the court. I understand that the state Supreme Court has mandated 4 officers, 2 of which would do assessment for intake and to do a transfer from the assessment center to the court. From my perspective as a taxpayer, I don't see and would hope that the state Supreme Court would share more of their perspective. Why can't the job responsibility of doing assessment by 2 officers also include the transfer and transportation of those juveniles from the juvenile assessment center to the court? I look at it from, okay, I get it. Who is going to, between local police department, handle the intake and the transfer of transportation of juveniles and the safety and concerns because they're juveniles to not be shackled or when they need to be shackled in those limited circumstances. From my perspective, I would hope that in any arbitration that the arbitrator at least have my perspective about compromise.
Thank you, Mr. O'Toole. We're at our 3 minutes.
And thank you.
Thank you for being here this evening. Appreciate your time, sir. Thank you again. Our next speaker is Reverend Derek Shelby. His subject is voting decisions. Mr. Shelby, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Genesis chapter 18, verse 24 and 25. 25, 26. Genesis 18, 25, 26. Listen to this. That it be far from thee to do this after this manner, to slay the righteous with the wicked, to slay the righteous with the wicked, and that the righteous should be as the wicked. That be far from thee, Lord. Shall not the judge of all the earth do right? And the Lord said unto Abraham, if I find in Sodom 50 righteous within the city, then will I spare all the place for their sakes. Rockford is so wicked. It's a wicked city. Listen to this. They took that election from Randy Brown. The first thing says, coin toss to decide school board race. The second one says that these are related articles. Thank the Lord Jesus for his blood. In 2011, the coin toss broke a tie in Perry Hill school board election in South Detroit. Early this month, a coin flip determined the next leader of a tiny town in southern Illinois called Carl. And then they have a card. Now, anybody know about gambling understands that the easiest thing you can cheat with is cards. Now, it ain't so much cheating. Then they come back and it says, I don't believe my memory card is wrong. I'm not going to change the count just to get an attorney. Not one person in the whole city stood up and said this is wrong. Is it 50 righteous in the whole city? No judges down there at that Auschwitz and Justice Center, not one. None of y'all on the county board. Nobody stood up and said this is not right. She was duly elected supposed to be a democracy. But Rockford is so wicked that they have just pushed black people to the curb like we're not human. They just took that seat from that woman and nobody did nothing. Not a word. Not the mayor, not nobody on the city council, not a lawyer stood up and said, well, I'll do it pro bono to go before the court. Since she was duly elected, she won by the right votes. The city is wicked. This is a wicked city. Has been for years. And it's amazing that nobody could stand up and say one thing about that girl, Luz. They took that seat from her. Just afraid,
Thank you, Mr. Shelby. You're at your 3 minutes, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I'll say this for the record. We are in a disagreement with our courts at this time. However, I don't think anybody in this room would refer to our courts as anything to do with Auschwitz. We're walking a very fine line with our rhetoric. Next item of business. Highway system maintenance. I'm going to ask Mr. Vanderwerf to come on up and give a short presentation. And the reason for this, if you'll indulge me, is that we have a few board members had questions about our how we select road projects, and I just wanted to give an update to some board members. Thank you, Joe.
Thank you. Chairman Haney, County Board members, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Tonight, I am going to talk about how we prioritize our projects for our capital improvement program. Just to say it in case I forget, all of our work that we do, we present to the county board before we go forward with it or put it in our budget. We just had a budgetary meeting last Tuesday to go review the proposed budgets. It's draft form, but the proposed budget and the projects that we plan on doing in FY18. We have a variety of elements as part of the highway system. As you can see on the board, traffic signals, bridges, small bridges and culverts, and then the roadway itself with a variety of factors in that. Oh.
You're done, Joe.
Our operations chairman hit the wrong button. Sorry, Joe.
So what I want to give you is a big picture on how we prioritize our projects. And what I want to point out with this particular slide is that our traffic signals and intersections are done a bit differently than our bridges and small bridges and culverts, and a bit differently than the highway system. I'm going to concentrate on the highway system for this presentation tonight. But for traffic signals and intersections, as you probably would imagine, we look at things that are related to congestion. When you have heavy congestion, you have accidents. So we look at safety. And the Public Works Committee has always made safety one of our #1 priorities at the Highway Department, so we take that very seriously. When we look at our bridges and small bridges, they follow the National Bridge Inspection Standards. That's a federally mandated system that we inspect our bridges, most of them on a 2-year schedule, and then we do a rating. That information is sent to the state. The state then comes up with a rating for that bridge structure, which is then put into our priorities, and we select the bridges based upon that inspection and those follow-up ratings. Now with the highway system, as we go forward, what we want to do is we want to avoid what you see in that slide there. And what I want to point out is, if you can see that over the condition of the highway, as you would well imagine, over time really starts to deteriorate. And we want to avoid the 3 to 10 times more cost effective, or spending more money over in this area. We want to try to keep the highway maintained by doing improvements as we go forward. And that ideal scenario is shown in this slide, where we would make an improvement, make another improvement, that kind of thing, to keep the amount of money we spend as cost effective as possible. The Highway Department and the staff at the Highway Department developed what we have termed the County Highway Asset Management Strategy, or CHAMS. And we have presented this also to the Public Works Committee. The CHAMS system is one in which is a very objective and systematic approach to maintaining our highway system. We take a look at the various factors along our roadways and give them a rating, and we come up with a rating scale. This is an example of how we might rate our highway system, and I don't know if you can read that or not from your seats, but I'll just go over a couple of these. We look at the pavement structure, the driving surface, the edge treatment, cross-section elements, geometry, safety features, those kinds of things. It's much more involved than what I'm showing you here, but these are the kinds of things we look at when we do our rating. It's a comparative rating. We have divided our highway system into various segments that are consistent between each other, and then we do a comparative rating between all those segments. Now, if you look over to your left, county board members, to my right, you'll see the County Highway Asset Record, or HAR, Highway Asset Record, and we have rated each of our highway segments throughout the entire county. And with that rating, we have developed our program to go forward, taking those projects which are the lowest rating, which also represents the lowest number, and try to develop a strategy where, within our budget, where we can deal with those highway segments in such a way we can improve our system as we go forward. And one of the things I wanted to mention to all of you is you can see those various colored dots over there, and I don't know if you can tell the difference, but there's some pink ones and some orange ones, but the green ones represent segments that we have upgraded. We just haven't re-rated them yet. And so we've done a lot of work on the worst parts of our system. The orange ones are the ones that are scheduled for improvement this summer, and the pink ones are the ones that we have in the works that we're looking at putting together design plans and specifications, those kinds of things. So when we rate these highway segments, the lowest 3 ratings really need major construction. The ones down near the bottom, or the highest rated sections, are ones that we can maintain probably most of the work with our own forces. And so we've got kind of a strategy or a map to go forward in how we deal with those issues. And then the last thing I wanted to point out to you is sometimes when we go forward with selecting projects, we are impacted by the various funding means that we have, which is back up on the slide projector. And if we were able to get money for a project that may not be one of the lowest rated projects, different from what we would like to do, but it's advantageous to the county to do so, we would then go forward with one that may be rated a little bit higher, but we knew that overall we'd be saving the county money. So sometimes we get some aberrations in that. With that said, that concludes my presentation, but one more item I wanted to add before I'm done is that we have the County Highway CHAMS manual that I gave to Dave Kelly to show all of you, and I'm asking if he would just pass that.
Don't try and read it tonight.
The interesting part about that is that was developed entirely by your highway department staff, and it's probably saved hundreds of thousands of dollars versus having a consultant do it. And I want to highlight 2 of the members of my staff who are in the back there, Dave Luchins, if you can stand up, and Veer Patel. And I don't know, but I'd like to give them a round of applause for all of them. And I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Joe. Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have comment firstly, and then I'll have a question. And that comment is this. I strongly believe in preventive maintenance, and I can appreciate what you're doing because it will help with large costs later on in life. And the question I have is, how many of these bridges do you service that are under the highway department?
And sorry, Chairman. How many bridges did you just say?
Do you service yet?
We have 90 bridge structures on the Winnebago County highway system. We also inspect, but we don't improve or put any maintenance in it, but we inspect 12 structures for other agencies, Village of Roscoe being one of them. And then we inspect all of the structures on the township highway system, which are 75. And just so everybody realizes, we also bill them for the time and effort we put into those inspections.
Any other questions, Mr. Wilson? Okay, thank you, sir. Mrs. Rudd.
Thank you, Chairman. I think maybe this week I saw the Winnebago County crew on Cunningham. What are they doing over there?
Well, they are improving Cunningham, and I actually was hoping that you had driven on Cunningham and you'd be able to tell me tonight you like what we did. Because I heard your comments back at the Finance Committee meeting, earlier this year, and they went out to make improvements to Cunningham Road, and it's actually the lowest rated segment on our system. And we made improvements we think will hold for several years by doing what we call blade patching. And that is your operations section, and the staff is very, very good at this blade patching. It doesn't involve a paving machine. They take graders, they dump the asphalt out, and they grade it, and it's very inexpensive, but it gets the job done. And I'm really proud of what they've done, both on Cunningham, and if any of you get time to look at that, I'd appreciate it. Also on Linden Road to the east of Alpine.
Okay, thank you. I'll drive it tomorrow.
Thank you, Mrs. Redditt. Any other questions? Mr. Schultz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm just curious, and if you can't answer this now, we can maybe get back to us, but where on that chart would you put us at the $1, and where would you put us at the $3 to $10?
Well, the bottom three sections, I would say, are closer to the $1. When you get to the middle section, you're probably in the $3 range. I can tell you that Cunningham Road is probably going to have to be reconstructed, that section we were just talking about, which is the worst rated one. And I believe Riverside, Alpine, Forest Hills area will have to be reconstructed. So I would say those are in the more $10 range.
Just follow up. My concern going forward is that we will end up consistently spending the $3 to $10 because we're always dealing with roads that have gotten into that condition where we've lost the opportunity. So at some point, a strategic plan where we can backfill the $3 to $10 items and get ourselves on a pace where we're spending the $1 instead seems like the right thing to do.
Thank you, Mr. Schultz. I think that's a very, very good point. Mr. Jury.
Thank you, Chairman Haney. Joe, I know our county roads are in some bad shape, but when you drive in Boone County and you drive on our county roads, all of them are blacktop, they're smooth. Can you give me a little update? I mean, is it because that we have extended ourselves on building Berryville Road, bonds that give our roads, I mean, they're blacktopping, they're rural roads. And can you give me some kind of information why we can't do that here?
Well, most of the reason, from my viewpoint, and I'm saying this objectively, is because we put the majority of our money into the major highway system that we have, and I had very little money to deal with the other roadway systems. I have been talking to Public Works at some time, longer-term members would remember this, that I've been trying to address the rural highway system too, because overall, we need to have an effective roadway system, and I think by resurfacing those rural roads, you'll get closer to that than the seal coating that we now do. However, I want to also point out seal coating is the least expensive method of taking care of your highways.
Right, and I want to thank you for what you do. You do a good job, what you have, and I know that Perryville has drained us, financially. You know, a lot of these county board members don't know that we built Alpine Road, we built Melford Road, Mulford Road. So we put all this money in helping the city, and then some of our rural roads kept us suffer for it. But thank you for the job you do. You do an excellent job. What do you have?
Thank you, Mr. Jerry. Any other questions by board members? Mr. Kelly?
Not a question, just a comment. I want to thank you, Joe, and the Highway Department for coming up with this objective, apolitical way of assessing the county highway system and deciding how repairs should be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Any other questions by board members? Seeing none. Joe, thank you very much for everything you do.
You're welcome.
Appreciate your time tonight. Next item of business, approval of minutes. May I please have a motion to approve the minutes from July 13th and lay over the minutes from July 27th? I have a motion by Mr. Jury, a second by Mr. Nicolosi. Any questions or comments by board members on the minutes before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Minutes pass. Thank you very much. Next item of business, announcements and communications. Clerk Mullins.
The items listed below were received as correspondence.
Okay, and we'll place those on file. Thank you, Clerk Mullins. Next item of business, board member correspondence. I see Mr. Webster first, and then Mr. Wilson. Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. I was recently at a Farm Bureau meeting. I'm a member of the Farm Bureau. And anyways, our friends at the Farm Bureau sent along these farm and food facts booklets that I brought along to you. I thought it'd be just a little bit interesting. It's an easy read. You know, our county crest, first thing you see on top of it is agriculture. And when you think about it, this county was founded on agriculture. Our first citizens, our first residents, of course, were all involved in agriculture. And the one thing, you know, we also have on our crest there too is like industry and so forth. And throughout the years, we have had industry come, industry go. Some things don't last, some things do. Well, agriculture is one of them. That's a real constant. It's always there. And the other thing there about it there is that the need that we have for agriculture, the other companion constant to that is our need to eat. We have to eat. So thank God for the farmer.
Thank you very much, Mr. Webster. Any other comments? Mr. Wilson.
Yes, I have three tonight. The first being Saturday, August 12th, there will be a unity picnic out at Camp Winnebago off North Main Street. And the community is invited to show up and take part in this if you would like. I know I have to speak a little bit. The second one is a job fair. We had a job fair last year and it was very successful. And again this year we intend to have a job fair on Tuesday, August 15th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And this is put on by the Rockford Ministers Fellowship, Inner City Reconstruction Group, Zion West, and Winnebago County Diversity Council. We stepped up. And this is again Tuesday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. at Mount Zion Baptist Church, 404 North Avon Street in Rockford. And some of the people that will be there, vendors, etc., Bonton, Woodward will be there, AAR will be there, the laborers, union officials, and the like, and some staffing companies. And the last announcement I have is at Memorial Hall, and that's next week, the day after the job fair, the 16th of August. And it is a lunch and lecture series. There's 3 of these, but the first series is this coming Wednesday. And The cost is $12, and Terry Dyer will be the person that carry on the lectures. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wilson. Mr. McDonald.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to remind everybody the Ski Broncs are hosting the national competition this weekend. There will be 14 teams from around the country. A little over 100 people per team. It's terrific for our local economy. They'll be competing Saturday and Sunday starting at 7:30 a.m. I believe it's free admission. The concession stand is open.
Thank you very much, Mr. McDonald. Any other comments by board members? Seeing none, we'll move on to our next item of business, Chairman's report. Just a couple quick items. I'll shoot through this very quickly. I want to thank the mayors inside Winnebago County. We had our first mayor's breakfast at Stockholm Inn the other day, and very excited about the group of mayors that we get to serve alongside with. Also want to thank Jay Sandine at the Park District, Mayor Jury at Loves Park, the mayor of Loves Park, and Mayor McNamara, the city of Rockford. They came here this week to meet with our staffs, and they brought some of their staff members, and I think this is kind of something the board wants to be aware of. So we asked our staffs at the financial level, purchasing level, administrator level, is come back to us in a couple of months with some ideas on how they can work together better to find efficiencies. And they're the ones who are the technical experts and are going to know where there's some opportunities that maybe we wouldn't at this level. So looking forward to some good ideas coming forward in the next few months at the professional staff level. I want to thank the State Line Chamber for having me out to give a quick State of the County update over lunch a few days ago. I want to wish happy birthday to a couple board members, Angie Gorel and Eli Nicolosi, happy birthday. And two other quick items. You're going to get some more information in the next week or two on a Senate bill that passed that will be signed by I think officially or ceremonially signed by the governor on Monday, SB 3, and it's related to some consolidation items that were approved in other counties that now will be statewide. So these are things that we just want you to start to be aware of. Sometimes we lose powers, sometimes we have unfunded mandates. This one actually gives a little more flexibility to local government, so it's something we just want to dial in on. Lastly, this is just maybe a heads up on a discussion that we may have in the next couple of months, just getting more engaged, informed, and aware of this opioid epidemic in our country, in our state, and here locally. Just a couple of statistics, 165,000, that's the number of overdose deaths related to prescription opioids between 1999 and today. 78.4 billion, the annual estimated impact burden of prescription opioid abuse in the United States. 42 billion in lost productivity, 26 billion in health insurance increased costs, 7.6 billion increased cost in the criminal justice system, 2.8 billion increased cost in substance abuse treatment facilities. So this is something that affects all of us, and we'll be sharing some more information in the coming months. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. With that, we can move on to our next item of business, our consent agenda. And with that, I'd ask for a motion to approve our consent agenda. Mr. Hoffman on the motion, and Mr. Jury Boomer on the second. Any questions on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda passes. Thank you very much. Next item of business, our Finance Committee, Mr. Biondo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finance Committee report. I'd like to make a motion to approve Budget Amendment 2017-023, County Miscellaneous. It's unallowed grant costs from IEMA and FEMA, which was $89,000 laid over from the previous meeting because I forgot to vote to suspend rules.
We have a motion by Mr. Biondo on Budget Amendment 2017-023, second by Mr. Hoffman, Jury, and Mr. Gorel. Any questions by board members on the item before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Mr. Biondo.
I'd like to also make a motion to approve resolution authorizing settlement of pending litigation. Finance Committee vote was 7-1. It's $165,000.
Got a motion by Mr. Biondo on the resolution authorizing the settlement of pending litigation, and I have a second by Mr. Jury and Mr. Hoffman and Mr. Girl. Any questions on item C before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a no vote by Mr. Fiducia and a no vote by Mr. Boomer. All others indicated an aye vote. Thank you. Motion passes. Mr. Biondo.
That concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Biondo. Next item of business, Zoning Committee, Mr. Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. The Zoning Committee has 4 items on our agenda tonight, all to be voted on. They were read in at our last board meeting. The first is SU 0617, and that comes with a recommendation of approval both from the Zoning Board of Appeals and from the Zoning Committee, and this comes with conditions. So I move to approve.
We have a motion by Mr. Webster on SU 0617 with conditions. May I have a second? Mr. Kelly, Mrs. Crosby, Mrs. Girl on the second. Any questions on the item before the board? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Webster.
Okay, the second is B on your agenda there. It's Z 1217. That's a map amendment to rezone, and that too came with approval from the Zoning Board of Appeals to approve, and the Zoning Committee followed suit with approval as well. And I would move to approve.
We have a motion on Z 1217 map amendment by Mr. Webster. May I have a second, please? Mr. Booker, Mr. Kelly, and Mrs. Girl. Any questions by board members on Z 1217? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We have a no vote by Mr. Schultz. All others cast an aye vote. Motion passes. Mr. Webster.
Thank you. The next 2 items go hand in hand. I'll read them both in. Item C is Z 1317. That's a map amendment. And the companion piece to that would be item D, Z 1417. That too is a map amendment. And both of these won unanimous approval from both the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Zoning Committee. So I would move to approve both at one time.
We have a motion by Mr. Webster on Z 1317 map amendment and Z 1417 map amendment. May I have a second? Mrs. Gorel, Mr. Kelly, and Mr. Hoffman. Any questions by board members on C and D? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Webster.
Thank you. Our next zoning committee meeting will be August the 23rd. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Webster. Next item of business, Economic Development Committee, Mr. Westcott.
Thank you, Chairman. Before us tonight, we have a resolution authorizing the execution of intergovernmental agreement to the Joint Region 1 Planning Commission, and I so move.
We have a motion by Mr. Westcott on the resolution authorizing execution of the intergovernmental agreement to Joint Region 1 Planning Commission, and a second by Mrs. Crosby, I believe Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Red, and Mr. Webster, if I'm not mistaken. Any questions by board members on the item before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Westcott.
That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Westcott. Next item of business, our Operations Administrative Committee, Mr. Jury.
Thank you, Chairman Haney. Your Operation Administrative Committee has an ordinance adopting sick pay It's an ordinance, so it'll be reading it for the first time, right? It was laid over, so we're gonna, yeah, I'm sorry, it was laid over. And I move for its adoption.
So we have a motion by Mr. Jury on item B, which is the ordinance adopting a sick pay policy laid over from the previous meeting. Motion by Mr. Jury, a second by Mr. Westcott, Mr. Nicolosi, Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Gorel, Mrs. Red, and Mr. Hoffman. Any questions on the item before us? Since this is an ordinance, we'll do this on a roll call basis. Are there any board members who object to the motion before us? I see 3 objections, Mr. McDonald, Mrs. Crosby, and Mr. Schultz. And I'll ask the clerk to cast a yes vote for all members present. Motion passes. Mr. Jury.
Our next resolution.
Oh, excuse me, point of order by Mr. Schultz. I apologize.
I don't know how we can have a motion for everyone to be voting for it when there were 3 opposed. For all members present is what you said.
Let me clarify so we're clear on the floor, and certainly we all want to be. There were 3 objections. I believe Mrs. Crosby, Mr. Schultz, and Mr. McDonald were no votes. All other members present cast a yes vote. Excuse my clunky language, but we certainly want to be clear on our votes. So appreciate that, Mr. Schultz. Mr. Jury.
Thank you. The next resolution awarding medical services, and I move for its adoption.
Got a motion by Mr. Jury on item C, the resolution awarding medical services, a second by Mr. Westcott, Mr. Hoffman. Any questions on the resolution awarding medical services? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Jury.
That concludes our report. We will be having an operations meeting on Monday the 14th. Notice that there will be a time change. I will notify all the committee members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jury. Next item of business, Public Works, Mr. Kelly.
Mr. Jury will be glad to know that we only have 3 items tonight. Our first is a resolution for the appropriation of motor fuel tax funds for the general pavement rehabilitation at various locations throughout Winnebago County, and I'll move its adoption.
We have a motion by Mr. Kelly on 17041, the resolution to appropriate MFT funds, a second by Mr. Boomer, Mr. Webster, Mr. Tassoni. Any questions or comments by board members on item B? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Kelly.
Our second resolution is authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement between Winnebago County and the Village of Machesty Park for Bauer Parkway and Victory Lane signal installation, and I'll move its adoption.
We have a motion by Mr. Kelly on 17042, the resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement, a second by Mr. McDonald, Boomer, Mr. Webster, and Mr. Tassoni. Any questions, comments by board members on the item before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Mr. Kelly.
And our final resolution is authorizing execution of an engineering services agreement with Willett Hoffman and Associates to provide a project plan and rate study for the expansion of the Winnebago County Waterworks system, and I will move its adoption.
We have a motion on 17043, and I have a second by Mr. Webster and a second by Mr. Girl. Any questions, comments by board members on the item before us? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
We have 2 no votes, Mr. Schultz and Mr. Jury. All other present board members were a yes vote. Motion passes. Mr. Kelly.
And that concludes our report.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Next item of business, our Public Safety Committee. Long awaited, Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Your Public Safety Committee has a resolution this evening, and that resolution is awarding inmate telecommunication services to Global Tech Link Incorporated, and now you've heard its approval.
We have a motion by Mr. Fiducia on the resolution awarding the inmate telecommunications service contract. Motion by Mr. Fiducia, second by Mr. Booker, Mr. Kelly, Mr. McDonald, Mr. Biondo, Mr. Hoffman, Mr. Wilson, Mrs. Red, Mr. Nicolosi, Mr. Girl, and Mr. Jerry. Any questions? Mr. Nicolosi.
Thank you, Chairman. This isn't a question, more so a comment and suggestion. I had brought this up in the last board meeting for the record, and these tablets are boasting that they can reduce violence in inmates amongst our corrections officers, which is extremely important. Obviously, these men and women put their lives on the line for us every single day, and if we can make it safer for them, I'm all for that. Again, going back to what I was asking for the suggestion, it would be nice to see some kind of report, both from the Sheriff's Department and maybe some corrections officers, just to make sure we can see for ourselves that reduction. I'd love to see we're getting what we're paying for, and I think the county would as well. So I hope they listen to that suggestion. Thank you.
Mr. Nicolosi, I appreciate your comments. I'm seeing Mr. Carter and Mr. Redmond, who are joining us from the Sheriff's Department tonight, are shaking their heads that they'll be happy to communicate updates as we go forward. And I believe Mr. Webster had a question.
No, it's a comment actually. I want to back up what Mr. Nicolosi was just speaking about. And I too would be very interested to hear perspective from the boots on the ground, the actual corrections officers, as well as from staff. But I think boots on the ground will give you the accurate description of what benefit those things are really given to them and to all of us. So thank you. And I also appreciate the comment earlier in there. I think that Bert brought up about having like a questionnaire sort. Bert, would you expand on that, please?
Mr. Girl.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Webster. My idea or my thought was that if we could have our inmates fill out just a general survey when they enter on the tablet, that maybe we can get some information that could be helpful in the future to create better programs, reduce recidivism, and actually curb crime and violence in our community by finding out who's coming here and why, and by helping those folks and just moving everything forward.
Thank you, Mr. Girl. Appreciate your comments. Any other questions or comments by board members? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
I have a no vote by Mr. Schultz, and I have a no vote by Mr. Westcott, and I believe we have yes votes by all other members present. Motion passes. Mr. Fiducia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That concludes the report. We will be having a meeting on the 16th.
Thank you, Mr. Fiducia. I do have a couple of quick items here. We have no unfinished business, no new business, but before we adjourn, I would ask the board for a very brief update here in closed session. And I'd entertain a motion to go to closed session to discuss pending litigation and a personnel item. I got a motion by Mrs. Crosby, a second by Mr. Wilson, Nicolosi, Boomer, and Biondo. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Go to closed session. Thank you, everybody.